Hello, I'm a hard times guy. I'm sitting here really grungy. I've been in and out. It's a hot day and I've been in and out of this room all day, and so sometimes I was sweating, sometimes I wasn't, and my hair's a mess. I feel a little greasy. Got a lot done today. It's late in the evening. I really should go down to the house, but I've been running back and forth to the house too because Betty got out of the hospital yesterday and I got to go check on her every once in a while. Make sure nothing's happened to her. Working on the Barb project, and I made a decision, and what caused me to make the decision was a little story of its own, and I felt like I ought to save it before I forget it. So I'm just going to tell that little story and show you a couple of things, and this will be a short video. I made a video, I don't know, 30, 40, maybe 60 videos ago called Projects or Two Projects, and in it I had 12 black drawer fronts. This is one of them. It's not black anymore because I'm working on it to go into the project. And I talked about how I like little drawers and how I'd kept these a long time for something special. And I don't know how long I've had these. It may be 30 years, who knows, maybe 15. They're over there. They got lost over there in the barn somewhere, and then I found them again one day in a box, and 12 little drawer fronts like that, and I just love drawers. But I didn't have anything special to make with them, and I decided on this project to put some drawers in it. And as it worked out, it's going to have 8 drawers in it. And I intended to make the drawer fronts out of part of the boards that Barb gave me. You've seen those boards already in some videos, but I'm going to show you one of them again. And this theme, this old sign that was the side of a building, is going to be worked into the project I'm making, and you're going to see parts of this in the finished product. And I intended to make those drawer fronts out of one of these boards to work together with the back of the project and the boards looking all the same. That meant cutting them across like this every 4.5, 5 inches until I had enough drawer fronts to make 8 drawers. That was my plan. That's the look I wanted, and I developed that look and got to a point that I couldn't get away from it, but I began to have a dilemma about those drawer fronts because I remembered something my grandfather taught me when I was a very young boy. So I'm going to talk about him for just a minute. His name was Sam Eddington. He was my mother's father. And he was a multi-talented man. He worked in the stone industry. I think he was a planerman, but I'm not sure. I think he was a supervisor part of the time too. The other men worked for him, but I think his trade was planerman. It means that he run a slab of stone and run a sharp blade back and forth across it, what they called planers, much like a wood plane, only different, in a stone mill. So he had that job and he worked at it, and I don't know of any other job he might have had, but he was also self-employed. He did lots of things. He had a shop behind his house. He did lots of things in there. He could weld. He used a cutting torch. I've got a video about he and I cutting up a old Packard. So he had a welding shop, and it was a woodworking shop, and he did, I think, custom planing, and for people in his wood shop. He had a wide planer. He had some heavy-duty tools, and he had some tailor-made tools that he had put together himself, table saws and planers, and he had a bandsaw. He had lots of different things that he worked with in woodworking. He built boats. I think of two that he built that I witnessed. And during his lifetime, before my lifetime, I'm sure he built many more boats out of wood. And he had a well-equipped shop in a long, low building behind his house. And when I was a boy, I used to spend time in that shop. I liked to go down there and be around my grandfather and watch him and do things in the shop. And he would let me do things in his shop and use tools. He had rules. And the first thing you did was you got the rules explained to you. And I had them explained to me several times until I guess he decided I knew them and didn't have to be refreshed. But there were rules about what tools you could use. There were rules about where you got your building material, where your boards came from, what boards you could use. And there were rules about what nails you could use. And if you could follow the rules, he'd just turn you loose over there. There was a scrap box that you could get wood out of and build things. And I built lots of things in his shop. Nothing real significant, nothing that I ever kept for very long. And nothing that showed that I had any talent either. But I like to build things. And I like to be near my grandfather. And he taught me things. He'd observe what I was doing too. And when he'd see me doing something that he didn't like, or see me doing something that he didn't agree with, he'd stop me and tell me something, try to teach me something, try to help me for the future. And that's where these drawers come in. In order to cut those boards into drawer fronts like this, I was going to have to cut across the grain and make those drawers. This one here is cut right. You might be able to see the grain in that wood running this way. And that board's cut right to be a drawer front. But I was going to have to cut those boards to have the letters oriented like I wanted them on the old sign. I was going to have to cut those boards across the grain, and I could have glued a little thin piece of plywood behind them, I guess, and made it a laminated board, but I didn't want to. So I decided to make them out of these. My grandfather taught me about wood. He'd stop and he'd tell me about the wood I was using. If it was oak and you're trying to drive them little skinny nails in that and it's never going to work, son, they're going to bend every time. You're never going to get a nail driven in that. In fact, you shouldn't be using that for what you're trying to do. You're going to have to drill holes to get nails in that. It's too hard. Here's some yellow poplar. Use this. Or, well, that's walnut, Luke, and what you're using it for is not walnut splits. Easy. You're going to end up, and just one thing and another after that. And one day I made a little bench or a table, and it was basically 3 boards, I think. It might have been 4. But there was a seat or a top and 2 legs. And I got some wood out of the scrap box, and I put the seat, the top on there, and then I put the legs on there, and I nailed through the top of the seat into the legs. And then I think I had a brace across that I nailed the legs to. And my grandfather was watching me, and he come over and he said, "That's never going to work." He said that won't last till you get home with it. And I said, "What do you mean? Do I need more braces?" He said, "No." He said, "Those legs you got under there." He said, "You cut those across the grain." He said, and that, not only that, but that's walnut. The first time you sit down on that, one of them legs will break, and somebody's liable to get hurt. And I said, "What do you mean?" And he sat down and he showed me how the grain ran in the wood and how it should run, what direction it should run to have strength, and why I needed the strength in those legs. And then he took that piece of walnut that I had, and he took it over to a table saw and he cut it into 4 strips. And to illustrate to you what he showed me, I've got some wood here. I've only got 2 strips because you're just going to have to learn the lesson without seeing it twice. He believed in repeating things so you understood things. He handed me a piece of wood. And he said, "Here, take that and break it." And I was a little boy. I took it and I tried to break it. I couldn't break it. He said, "Break it across your knee." So I took it and I hit it on my knee, and it broke. Kind of like this. Just broke right in 2, right across my knee. And he said, "That wood, that stick is cut across the grain." He said, "The grain runs this way, and it's cut that way." And he said, "That's the way your legs are." He said, "You put them legs on there and they're going to break just like that stick broke." He said, "Take this one." He handed me another one, and it was cut with the grain. He said, "Break that across your knee." I hit my knee with it, and I'd hurt myself. He said, "Go ahead, break it." I said, "I can't break it." He said, "Yeah, break it. Hit it. He said, "Here." He put it up on a thing like that. He said, "Hit it with a hammer," and I hit it, and it still didn't break. He said, "See that?" He said, "That piece is cut with the grain. You can't break that." And I always remembered that. Sometimes I wasn't, I was just a little kid. I was probably 10, right in that neighborhood, maybe a little older, maybe a little younger. And I always, depending on what kind of wood it was, I sometimes couldn't tell which way the grain ran in it anyway. Couldn't tell by looking at it. Some wood had less grain in it than others. And he taught me about that too. He used to cut wood and show me grain, or cut wood and said, "Smell that?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "That's walnut." Or, "Smell that?" And I said, "Yeah, that's oak." And he got me to where I could recognize some woods by what it smelled like when you cut it. That don't amount to nothing, but it's a story I'd like my family to remember. How my grandfather taught me things, because I'm trying to teach them things. I treasured my grandfather. My grandfather on the other side, I didn't see him very often. When I did, he never spoke to me, so don't have any fond memories of him. But my Grandpa Sam, I got lots of fond memories of being around him. And when he said something to me, it was precious. He wasn't real talkative. He didn't waste words. But when he had something to say, he made clear so you'd understand. So I couldn't bring myself to cut this board wrong and make drawer fronts out of it. So I'm using these drawer fronts. I'm using 8 of them. I had 12. Still got 4 of them over there. I'll make another project out of them someday. But these drawer fronts will go in there. I have to put some extra work, some extra paint, some extra time. It'll be more difficult to make them work. But when I get done with them, they'll be right. And my grandfather can be proud. I'm a hard times guy. Have a good day.